And welcome back to the Pouncer Freelancer Education Series. I am Jerod Morris here with Sean Jackson, founder and CEO of Pouncer. And it is time now for the last lesson in our beginner series. And it is about a topic that I know a lot of you have been waiting for us to talk about. And that, Sean, is setting rates. That's what we're going to talk about here. Let's start out kind of how we have in some of these other lessons, talking about some mistakes that people make, some common mistakes. What are the biggest pricing mistakes that you see new freelancers make?
I think they worry about it way too much. I think it's funny that we're talking about this topic because literally the other day, and I'm going to pop over to our community site real quick. I write about 3 times a week about different topics on our community site over at Pouncer. And the last article I did literally just a day ago is why your Upwork profile hourly rate shouldn't dictate your actual pricing, right? And I start with the premise that we spend way too much time thinking about what our hourly rate should be. And it's basically, I think that there is a science behind it. There is value behind it. But the key thing, is thinking about your hourly rate as a marketing tool, So let's go and just take a look here since we have the screen share up. It's really just a function of marketing tool, because the reason I say that is because what you actually end up charging a client and what your hourly rate on Upwork is will be and probably should be completely different. Okay. I think a lot of people have the misperception that, all the jobs on Upwork are hourly based, like they're going to be tracking every single minute that you do. And there are jobs that are like that. They're absolutely jobs. But I want to give you the fact that let's take a look at this guy right here for $15 an hour. He says he's wants to spend $15 an hour. Okay, great. What if I need him right now? What if I need him to drop everything he is doing and doing my work right now? Don't you think he should charge me a premium for that, Jerod? I think he should, right? Yeah. So is it 15 an hour or is it suddenly 25 an hour, right? Or maybe it's a huge project and I want him to come up and I want him to, do something that's going to take 3 or 4 months. Maybe the hourly rate is less because the amount of work that I'm giving him is higher. This is why I look at your hourly rate as a marketing tool. That's it. It's just kind of a placeholder. It's like, this is a start of a negotiation, and I don't want to be too high. I don't want to be too low. But what I want to do is make it attractive enough to the client so they're worth, coming up and saying, hey, maybe there's something here that I want to look at. The other thing about hourly rates that I think, again, especially depending on what country you're in, if you just go into the general view here, I just look for WordPress developers who have the skill WordPress. We start looking at these hourly rates and you're like, oh, everybody's charging too low, right? No one is charging a lot. Well, let's go take a look at what freelancers in the US are charging. Notice how that changed there, Jerod?
Yeah.
Freelancers in the US have a broad spectrum, right? So yes, if you look at all the freelancers and all the world, it's going to skew to the lower rate because different countries have different cost of living, right? So your skew is going to be completely different. But so I look at that and then I look at this and I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm based in the US. What is my US competition charging? Okay. And we're going to see that they're kind of all over the place, right? If we look at the mid mark of $50, right? We're going to see people that are, 66, 70. We're going to come in here and then let's get into the really higher amount. We see people at 90. We see people at 100. Okay. Again, and by the way, I want to point out that even at $90, he's earned over 600,000 on the platform. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, I think we worry way, way too much about it. What generally the advice that I have, if you are just starting out, is, and this is true when you're in the very beginning stages of your Upwork journey, you don't want to be too cheap and you don't want to be too expensive. You want to be in the Goldilocks zone, right? So, and here's why. If you are targeting US people, they may want to work with a US based freelancer. So with a US based freelancer, they're probably willing to pay a little bit more. If I don't care about their location, I just want something super, super cheap, then maybe this $15 an hour is something that's fine. I may not, I don't know the value of quality he provides, but I don't care about quality. I just want to pay very little, right? So to me, when I'm looking at pricing, what you should price your services, the first thing I do is look for my competition. And then I look for based on my location. Where am I in competing with other people that a potentially client would want to hire? And if we can see right here, I've got a good broad spectrum in here. Very few charge over 100, very few charge less than $20 an hour. Okay. So maybe I want to be at that 30, 40, $50 range, right? So that I can sit there and maybe stand out a little bit more by saying, hey, I'm really good. And I'm going to be just a little bit less than other freelancers. Does this make sense so far?
Yeah, it does. I did an interview a long time ago with a marketing coach named Paul Klein, and he said something about pricing that forever changed how I looked at it, where he said pricing is positioning. And you kind of said the same thing here, where you need to think of it like marketing, but it really does position you. Are you going to go with a lower price and maybe try and churn through a lot of projects quickly, to kind of earn volume, and you don't really care about the quality? Or are you going to go with a little bit of a higher premium? Maybe you're doing fewer projects, but maybe you're looking at working with people who are a little bit more experienced on the platform.
Yeah.
So you really have to think about how it positions you for what people are looking for.
Exactly. And then you bring up a good point about anchoring, okay, which is why you don't want to be the cheapest, okay? Because if you are too cheap, you will be anchored to that price forever. I don't care. I do not care. No, it happens to everyone. If you charge someone $20 an hour, and then 6 months later, you want to charge them $40 an hour, they are anchored to the $20 an hour price. Okay. On top of which, what you actually end up charging them is probably has nothing to do with the rate that you're putting out there on Upwork. And this is what I keep on going after, is that it is a marketing piece, right? It is the equivalent of saying, I can create a suit for you starting at $300. Okay. I need a suit. $300 is, it sounds good, but for an extra 600 or 200 or whatever, you can have this material. You want this. And then all of a sudden, once I get into buying the suit, my $300 starting price scales up because now I want more things. This is the same that's true with freelancers. Now, so you never want to be too cheap. And now to be expensive, I want to talk about that in a second, but generally you want to be in the Goldilocks zone when you're starting out. A little bit less than average, just a little bit less than average. Okay. Because you want to say, I'm good enough to be average, but I'm going to give you kind of lower rate because you can just tell I'm new to the platform. Now,
and to be clear, the way that you would find that is you go research competition
that's right,
that are seeking similar jobs to what you want, and then kind of position your pricing
that's right
there in that zone. Okay.
When you're in Upwork, in the top right-hand side, you'll see search. It says jobs. The next one is talent. Search for your competition. Now, let's talk about super high-end pricing, okay? Super high-end pricing, you need to have authority to justify the price point, okay? And the authority comes from many different places. One, how much have you earned? How many jobs you've had successful, okay? Do you have a skill set that is so unique that you're one of the few, okay? Or do you have experience that blows everyone else away? Let me give you an example. If you were the head of Apple design and you just created up a profile on Upwork and it literally says, I'm the former head of Apple design, hire me as a designer, I'm charging $1,000 an hour. You're going to be like, that's cheap. Oh my God. I could have the guy who did Apple's products. I could hire him for $1,000. I don't care, because his authority overweighs the pricing consideration, right? Like you're like, that makes sense. That's a good, like seriously, like if Warren Buffett put it on there and says, I give financial advice and it's $100,000 an hour, you'd be like, done. Yeah, here, dude. Right. So I think authority allows you to increase your pricing. Authority based on scarcity. I'm one of the few people who can do it. Authority based on the quality of work. Look at my reviews, look at the jobs that I performed. I can scale up. Look at who I've worked for, even if you're new. If you were the head, another one, I was the senior engineer at Shopify and I'm a Shopify developer. I'd be like, yeah, I want the guy who used to work for Shopify building my Shopify site. So by his authority, he can increase his pricing and he can put it as stake in the ground. Most of us don't have that authority. Most of us have done I've done copywriting work for maybe sites you've heard around. I've done WordPress sites, maybe sites you know about. Most of us are in the Goldilocks average zone on Upwork initially. Over time, the value of what we've created is reflected in our profile, hence our rates can go up. But again, don't overly obsess about it, because I'll use the analogy that I started with. I need you right now, Jerod, to write me 10 blog posts, and I have to have them by Friday. Okay. And you'll be like, well, I have to drop everything I'm doing, Sean. Well, I don't care. Charge me, because I need this fixed now. My website is down. I am losing thousands of dollars an hour. Fix my site right now. Do you think, well, should I charge him $19 or $20? Oh, I don't know. You're going to be like, oh, you need your website back up? I can get it done for you, but you're going to pay me a lot per hour. That's why I think it's just a marketing ploy.
How, I know you said don't obsess over it, but it is still important. What coaching would you give folks on how to know if they're like, what signals are there that your pricing is wrong? Like,
okay, so what
indicates that your pricing is too low? What indicates that maybe you're a little high?
Yeah, let's go back to let's go back to Upwork for a second. Okay, so let's go and take a look. So again, let's say, and I'm using the analogy, I'm a WordPress developer. I am here in talent search. I am looking for a WordPress developer, right? What I'm going to want to do is I'm going to start looking for my competition. I'm going to come in here and, I may or may not have top rated badges, right? I will pick the skills that I have. I'll pick my country. I'll pick some of the basics that are in here. Okay. And so you really do kind of want to refine down and say, okay, this would be my competition at what stage I'm in. Now, based on that, where's my Goldilocks zone? Well, your Goldilocks zone is somewhere in the middle, right? So generally, if I'm looking at the Goldilocks zone, I see that in the US, there's a little bit more of a trend towards that $60 an hour, right? So that if I'm looking at these people directly at $60 an hour, let's just kind of expand it out. These people have probably got some good success scores. They've got some money earned. Like these are solid potential people, right? So I don't think I compete with them in the very beginning. So maybe I want to come back down here and take a look at these people. Okay, $50 an hour. All right, maybe I can compete with that. Let's take a look at the $40 an hour. $40 an hour, maybe I can definitely compete against these people. All right. And that's the way that I start to look at this, is that I don't want price to be an immediate no. I want price to be, is it makes sense for the talent that I'm about to hire? That's what the advice is, Jerod. Look at your competition and where you are and say, you know what, this guy's earned 100,000, he's pretty good, and he's $40 an hour. I want to kind of get the kind of work that he's doing. Let me go and maybe price a little bit under him or a little bit over him, because trust me, in the United States, no one's sitting there going, well, $40 an hour versus $42 an hour. Oh my gosh. Even though that's a 5% differential, that's not the way that buyers think. But if it said $40 an hour and $500 an hour, yeah, I'm probably going to go with the $40 an hour guy. Does that answer the question, Jerod?
Yes. Yeah. And I think, would you say that it's fair to say that as you go up in price, your profile needs to stand out even more? Because ostensibly, as you go up in price, you're going to be competing with better people who have more impressive profiles. And that's where all these other features of Pouncer that we've talked about really come into play, helping you stand out to help justify that price.
Look, you're going to be using a tool like Pouncer to come up and start getting more work, right? And then as that work accumulates, you build more authority. That's why I keep on going. Your price is related to authority, right? In the very beginning, you have very little authority unless you have an externality, okay, that just makes you completely different, right? I did the design for Porsche. You're like, I want to hire that guy, right? Because that authority supersedes the newness of your Upwork profile. Most of us don't have it. Price in a way that says, I want to get some work. In the very beginning, by the way, you're always going to undercharge and overdeliver, always. So it really doesn't matter at that point because you're in the beginning. In the middle part of your journey, you're going to want to put your price probably around average, a little bit above average. And then as you become, your authority builds, right? You have earned a lot. You have lots of successful projects. You are a player in there. Then you're definitely going to move it up. But even if you move it up, it doesn't matter because it's still not the rate that you're going to end up getting. That's what I keep on. If you take nothing else from this, what you put on your hourly rate on Upwork is not the actual amount you get per hour from jobs on Upwork. Period. Unless you are literally on the, I work per hour doing VA work where someone is doing time tracking. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you're doing that, okay, that's fine. But that's not the people that tend to use PouncerAI. Our people tend to do project-based work, right? They're not going to do hourly-based work. So if you're looking for an hourly type job where you just want to be charged for the hours that you have, then again, be in the Goldilocks zone. And the other aspect for all of you, because we do have one customer that I talk to quite a bit from Jamaica. He actually is a customer service rep. Okay. He's actually pretty good. He's on the sales development side. Originally his hourly rate was like $10. I said, no, it should be $20. He goes, why? Because I was like, because in the United States, you can get $15 an hour working at fast food restaurant. I want someone with a little bit better quality than a fast food worker. Hence, I will pay you $20 an hour. And guess what happened? He got the job.
Yeah.
He's being paid $20 an hour, but he started at 10. Actually, he wanted to start lower than that. And I was like, no, that's not, price to your audience. And if you're really good at sales development, even in a call center environment, $20 an hour to a US company is nothing, but it can make a world of difference in Jamaica.
Makes sense. All right. Well, Sean, this is the final video in our beginner series. Next up, we're going to be going into the intermediate series. Any final thoughts for folks here as we wrap up the beginner section of the freelancer education series?
Yeah, I think in the very beginning, you have to do a lot of block and tackling. Just get the basics done, right? Get a good picture in there, get a good title, do a video, get your portfolio, especially your portfolio, work on your overview. The reality is you got to do the block and tackling in the beginning. But once you get the block and tackling done, you need to start applying. You need to get out there and start, putting your hat in the ring and start getting jobs. So get the blocking and tackling done. Get past this as fast as possible. Do small little jobs to build up some, star ratings, right? Just get past this stage because we've all gone through it. But the beauty is that what waits for you ahead is where you're going to really make the real money. So get past this stage and do the basics and do it right. And then let's go make some real money.
Absolutely. All right. So this beginner series, we talked about kind of the first basic steps to succeeding on Upwork. As we move in now to the intermediate series, we're going to talk about some more advanced strategies for putting together proposals that win and that, as you talked about, kind of competing. How do you make proposals that can compete and win the kind of jobs that you want? That is coming up next. Join us in the intermediate section of the PouncerAI Freelancer Education Series. We'll be back soon.